Well, good day to everyone, and thank you for taking a little bit of time out of your day to come back for day 2 of our Securing a Hybrid Active Directory Infrastructure. Yesterday we had a very good discussion on detecting changes that occur within Active Directory, and today we're going to change focus a little bit and really focus on those endpoints. For some of you that were involved in some of my webinars last year, I focused on some aspects of our endpoints, but I'm going to go a little bit deeper today. And you know, one thing that I want you to keep in mind is that endpoints are the way into attacking our networks. So if you really think about it, if I'm an external attacker, the way that I want to get into your infrastructure is through an endpoint because it's the easiest way. If I'm an internal attacker, I have an endpoint, and that's what I'm going to use to try to attack the network. So endpoints are a critical aspect of securing our network infrastructure. So that's going to be our topic for today. A little bit of housekeeping. This is being recorded. So in the next day or two, you should be receiving an email with a link to the recording, so keep an eye out for that. We do encourage you to share that with others, maybe that couldn't attend, other colleagues that you think it would be important for them to get the information. Please share it at will with others. I do have some colleagues working with me, so if you do have any questions as we go through, we do have quite a few people that are in the webinar today, and I want to thank you all for that. But if you do have any questions, just post them in your GoToWebinar panel, and someone will be answering those in line. If for some crazy reason we don't get to all the questions, we will be sending out an email to you afterwards with an answer to your question. If you do have any questions and you're a little shy to post in GoToWebinar, that is my email address right there on the screen. So please, you know, keep in contact with us. It is certainly something that is important for all of us here on the Active Directory team to keep in touch with you, and email is a great way to do that. I guess the last point of housekeeping is who I am. My name is Derek Melber. I am the Chief Technology Evangelist for the Active Directory Solutions team. And really what that means is I have the amazing opportunity to tour the world, talking with administrators, talking with organizations, helping them better understand Active Directory, group policy and security, and find solutions for them around that. So that is what I get to do, and I get to do that through seminars. I get to do that through our user conferences, and I also get to do it through webinars and video. So I have what I consider to be a pretty awesome job. I do want to share some resources with you that you can take advantage of when we're done. I know that some of you are going to get tired of this by the 4th time, but you know, we never know who is new to these webinars, and I want to make sure that I go over the material so that everyone can take advantage of these online materials afterwards. So first and foremost, what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump out here to our webpage, and I'm going to show you some free resources that are constantly updated that you can take advantage of when we're done. First of all, when you come to the main landing page, ManageEngine.com, come over here to Company and go to Blogs. This used to be under Support Blogs, but now it's under Company Blogs. And up here, you can do searches on different things that you want to look for. Maybe you want to look at Active Directory. Maybe you want to look at MFA. Maybe you want to look at group policy, whatever it is. You come in here, you type it, and boom, you now have dedicated blogs related to things that are important to you. So this is an excellent resource. We update this once to twice a week, and it is a great way for you to keep up to date on things that we are doing. Just to give you a heads up on the blogs, typically the way a blog is written is I get a question in a seminar or a webinar, and based on that question, I post a blog with the answer to the results. So my philosophy has always been, for the 20 years I've been doing this, if someone has a question, usually multiple people have a question, and that's really the philosophy. Another excellent resource is if you come to our main landing page again and hover over products, at the lower part of this, you'll see security hardening for Active Directory. This site was built just about 3 years ago. And it was in response to some technology that Microsoft was releasing. And that technology was actually called JIT and GIA, just in time and just enough access. And what I found, and I have found over the years, is that most administrators haven't heard of this, and those that have not implemented this. Over the 5 years that I've known about JIT and GIA, traveling the world talking with administrators and asking them if they're using it, I'm still at 3. So you got to consider that last year I went to 25 countries, did over 125 presentations, and I've done that for 5 years. And in that time, 3 organizations are using this technology. So we felt that it was important to secure Active Directory, and if people weren't going to use the technology, well, why not give them a recipe for that? So if you go to the bottom of this page, you'll see all these different areas related to security hardening of Active Directory, your domain controllers, your servers, and your endpoints. Come in here, click on any one of these areas, and you'll see blogs dedicated to how to secure that area. It's not only how to secure it, but how to report on it, and the mechanism on how to secure it. So this is a pretty important website. All this information is free. It really is 20 years of me working with auditors and security professionals, and administrators to put all this information together for you. A final resource that I want to point out is our Securing Privileged Access and Active Directory Dummies book. This is a perfect resource for you, the administrator, to get others in your organization to understand the importance of privileged access. So download it, share it with others, pass the word. Let's try to get Active Directory environment secure so we can reduce these attacks and breaches that are occurring what appears to be constantly. I do want to also point out that this is only the second webinar in a series of 4. Again, we had one yesterday, and we have another one tomorrow, and then one next Tuesday. In order for you to register for those, if you've only registered for this one, come to our main landing page, go to the very bottom of this page and go to events. Once you've clicked on events, go and select webinars, and you will see the webinars listed here. You can simply click on the title, and from that title, you can then register. And you see that we have other topics as well. So this is a great way for you to keep in touch with us and get free information. Let's talk briefly about our 2019 World Tour. Our 2019 World Tour is kicking off very soon. I believe our first seminar is going to be in Sydney, Australia, either Melbourne or Sydney, and then we move over to New Zealand, and we just continue from there. We will be coming to the United States usually 2 to 3 times a year, 3 to 4 cities each swing, so keep an eye out for that as well. The World Tour AD seminars are an excellent way for you to meet others in your area and get awesome solutions. We try to stay away from product in terms of really bringing you in and just talking about product. The whole point of these seminars is meeting the needs of administrators and organizations. And we have some amazing topics, in my opinion, this year. And we're talking about hybrid. We're talking about getting rid of passwords with multi-factor authentication. And we're talking about some amazing new technology called UBA, user behavior analytics, or user and entity behavior analytics. And we'll be going over all of that and how it can impact you and your job and help your organization secure the environment. So pretty awesome stuff. I'm pretty excited, as you can tell, about that. So that's some stuff that you can do after we're done with the webinar. But let's now jump into the webinar and talk about our endpoints. Our endpoints are vital, and as I said before, the endpoints are the way that attackers get into our network and compromise data, compromise the environment, and can get anything they want. So we must secure our endpoints. Before we can detect anything around our endpoints, the endpoints must be secure. Because if we are getting information regarding changes to the endpoint and we don't know what the endpoint started at, we have no idea if that change is a good or bad thing. So we first must secure our endpoints, okay? So when you are putting a endpoint into production, that is the time that you secure your endpoint. How do you do that? Well, first of all, you're going to secure the accounts, right? The local users. Every single computer, every single endpoint has a local SAM, a local security accounts manager. So you need to, first of all, address the local administrator account. You're going to disable this administrator account, or if you want to keep it enabled, you're going to use LAPS, Local Administrator Password Solution. It's a free technology from Microsoft that randomizes the password and stores that password in Active Directory. That way, no one knows what the password is. You have to run a command to pull the password out. It is a one-use password, and then Active Directory changes it again. So please take advantage of these technologies. I also suggest that you create an admin account. Now, I put admin in quotes here because it's not going to be named admin. It's going to be named something else, okay? There needs to be ways into the environment. Many organizations just disable the administrator account and then create another account that's going to be used for administration. You obviously put this account in the local administrators group. That way it gets all the required privileges that it needs to do the administration. But do not keep the same password for this account across your endpoints. This is a perfect way that you're going to be hacked, and pass the hash or pass the ticket is going to be able to gain access through all of your endpoints and into Active Directory, okay? Another key thing about provisioning endpoints securely, no local user accounts, okay? You have administrator, you have this admin account, and nothing else. There's no other reason to have another user on that machine. Any employee working on that machine is simply going to use their Active Directory user account. They're not going to use the account that's in the local SAM. Even if they're traveling on an airplane, they're going to use cache credentials, all right? So those are users. What about groups? The correct membership in the local administrators group, domain admins, the local administrator, and that admin account that you created, okay? If I jump over here to my live production environment and I go over to my local SAM on this particular endpoint, this is your first action item. I love action items, right? So when we're done with the webinar, this is what I want you to do. I want you to pick 10 endpoints in your environment randomly. Just pick 10. One per department, one per type of user. I don't care what it is. And I want you to go over to the groups, and I want you to get a listing of the members of the local administrators group. It should only have the 3 accounts, okay? If any other accounts are in there, ridicule why they're there and verify that they are correct. Now, some of you might have an account for SCCM, some other type of management, something like that, but we should not have any accounts other than the required accounts in the local SAM, okay? Also look at backup operators. In my opinion, this should be empty. We're typically not backing up your endpoints. Now, of course, you may be using some software to maybe back up the image, but that's totally different than the backup operators group, okay? So make sure it's empty, and again, if there's someone in there, ridicule it and make sure that we keep that clean. We also want to use the concept of least privilege. This means that the employee using the computer, their Active Directory user account should not be in the local administrators group. Now, I know that a lot of you are shaking your head right now going, well, Derek, how in the world do they use their computer then? Because we have applications installed, and the application is poorly built, and the application requires that the user be a local administrator. You're going to just get software to fix that. There's software that's been out for well over 10 years to fix that. Go get the software, install it, and take the user out of the local administrators, okay? This is a requirement for security. If you're allowing your users to be a local administrator, no wonder we're being breached all the time. We must take these measures to secure our infrastructure, and it starts at our endpoint. Okay, enough of being on the soapbox. So we must secure things correctly out of the gate. If we secure things correctly out of the gate, it's going to be much easier for us to detect changes that are occurring on our endpoints. So now that we have things secure on our endpoints, we now only need to check for changes, okay? Now, this is a really important concept. I want you to think about this. If let's say you're a small organization, you only have 100 endpoints. If you know that right this second, everything that I just went over for every one of those endpoints is correct, the only thing you have to worry about for security on those endpoints is if something changes on those endpoints because they're secure. So all you need to do is detect, for example, for local group changes. Keep in mind, only admins can modify local group membership. We just verified that only administrators are in there. No users are in there. Administrators don't want anyone to have administrative access over endpoints. So administrators aren't going to change this. The only way that the group membership is going to change on an endpoint is if it's hacked. So if it is hacked and someone adds themselves to a local group, you want to be notified of that. It's really this simple. Now, if we look at the reality of how Windows functions, if someone is added to a group and we are auditing on that endpoint, the results of that audit show up in the event viewer in the security log on that machine. So right here is the security log on this machine, and I have 33,000 events. So if someone modifies a group, it is going to show up in this log on each endpoint. Now, I mentioned earlier a small environment with 100 endpoints. I just was speaking with a colleague that was dealing with a customer that had 70,000 endpoints. Now, one of the things that I try to stress to all administrators is that we need to set up environments for detection and alerting that are going to make us successful. And what I mean by that is we don't want false positives. But think about this. If you can somehow pull from the security log on all of your endpoints anytime a local group changes membership, and you get an alert on that, you'll be alerted of when that changes. It's not going to change that often, so how many alerts are you going to receive? Not very often. So the idea is that we need to pull the events from all endpoints and then alert us when that changes. Well, that would look like this. So over here, I can actually set up reporting for local machines of when groups change. And I can not only look at recent, I can look over time. So now I can get a report of when any group changes on a local machine, an endpoint, historically. Now, of course, I only have my Windows 7 machine here, but this is where you can come in and you can filter. You can filter based on who made the change, the group that changed. This is so powerful. And again, this is tied to an alert. So if someone does change membership on a machine, typically is going to indicate that I'm under attack. Because I am pulling information off of every endpoint and alerting, I now can be notified of when I'm under attack and specifically which endpoint is under attack. This information is vital. Now, I don't care what the attack is. It could be ransomware. It could just be some type of application that's installed monitoring the behavior of that machine. It maybe is an application that is going to, move laterally in your environment. But if you know that a machine has been compromised, you now can take action on that one machine. Possibly you can just pull it off the network, unplug it, disconnect it from the network. Now you have removed that attack endpoint from your environment, reinstall the OS, and keep moving. These are things that we can do as long as we have SIM solutions like AD Audit Plus in place to help us to be notified when these things are changing. Okay? Let me recap some things that are important. First, you must secure your endpoint properly before you start to monitor it. 2, once you know that it's secure, rarely are things going to change. So when you put something like AD Audit Plus in place, which can alert you for changes, you know that change is essential and you have to take immediate action. Pretty cool, huh? All right, let's move on and talk about local users. If we don't have any local users, except for the administrator type accounts, these things aren't going to change often. Only admins can modify local user accounts. So only admins can create them. If we don't want them there, administrators don't want them there. Again, the only time that we are going to have a user created on an endpoint is when we are under attack. The same concept applies. If I create a new user, it shows up under the security log. If I have 10,000 endpoints, that means I have 10,000 security logs that I have to monitor. Don't do that manually. Certainly don't do that with PowerShell. All you need is a solution that allows you to come in and see when users are created. It's this simple, right? I want to be able to see when users are created. I want to get the details around that. If I'm getting users created on endpoints or just one endpoint, I want to immediately take action to make sure that that creation was correct. Now, we all know that there are certain computers in the environment that we can't stop from the user being a local administrator, right? Let's list some of those. The CEO, the the C-level people always want to be a local administrator. Because they're signing our checks, we can't always negate them. We have developers that want to be a local administrator. We have people in IT that want to be a local administrator. So these are machines that certainly we have to pay attention to, but we need to pay attention to all of them because any one of them can be compromised. And we need solutions in place that give us alerts, that give us historical reporting to know when these types of things are changing in our environment. So we want to secure our local groups. We want to secure our local users. But we also want to detect key changes that are occurring on our endpoints. So what else can we look at? Well, many times when attackers come in and they compromise an endpoint, they want to install a service. They want to install a service that is going to gather information in the background. It's going to do something. It's going to send information back out. Maybe they're going to create a scheduled task and hide things, right? Because normally endpoints don't have scheduled tasks set up. So if there's a scheduled task that's running at 3 a.m., possibly the service is gathering the information and the scheduled task is sending the information back home. Another thing that as attacks move laterally, they may want to share folders. So some computer, an endpoint, becomes a central location to house files, put logs, who knows what's going on. So we want to look for shares that are created, as well as user rights that are modified. Now, let's talk briefly about the user rights, and then I'll show you how to set up this type of detection. So I'm going to come over here to my endpoint, and I'm going to show you how to generate a report of the current user rights. This is another area that you need to make sure is secure out of the box. So if I come in here and I run a tool called SecPol, SecPol.msc, it will allow me to see the current list of user rights that are on this machine. So right here, you can see every single user right. There's about 35 of them, and who is set up for this. So you'll want to come in, make sure that your user rights are correct. Then you'll want to audit that. Now, auditing is something we discussed yesterday. It's set up through a group policy, and you not only push it out to your domain controllers, but because we're wanting to detect changes on our endpoints, you're going to push out auditing also to all of your endpoints. It's the same GPO. It doesn't really matter, right? So once you have the auditing set up, it goes to the security log. We're going to pull it from the security log. And now that we're pulling that information from our security log, this is where we can come in and we can see the things that are changing, right? So we can come in here and we can see the changes that are occurring to services, scheduled tasks, anything that's starting on that machine, anything that's changed on that machine. Again, we can set up alerts and we can be alerted. How often do you think a scheduled task is created on your endpoint? Not very often. If you receive an alert that one was created, I would suggest you take action. How often are services installed on your endpoints? Not very often. So if you receive an alert that a service was installed on an endpoint, maybe you want to take action. These are the concepts of making sure that the foundation is secure, and then all you do from that point is look for changes that are occurring. It's a simple concept, one that I think most administrators kind of overlook, and we're actually being breached at a very high rate because we're not securing our endpoints. So we look at groups, we look at users, we detect changes in them, we look at key activity on our endpoints such as services, scheduled tasks, and that will help us monitor if we're potentially under attack. Now, another concept that I want to bring to light is the idea of detecting attacks as they occur. Now, this could be an attack on an endpoint or from an endpoint, okay? Now, let's kind of cover what I mean by that. There is a new technology, you've probably seen it on advertisements for finance and whatnot, called UBA, and it uses artificial intelligence. User behavior analytics is a subset of AI, artificial intelligence. And what UBA does is it establishes a baseline of activity per user, per host. It is this baseline of activity that is used to detect anomalies that are going on. Let me just show you instead of talking around it. So inside of AD Plus, we have added user behavior analytics. And what we can do is we can come in here and look at normal behavior. So I can come in here and look at usual activity of time based on a host. So I can come in here and I can select the computers that I want to look at. So let's just select them all. And now I can select activity. Let's just look at logon time. Let's look at all of them. Why not? So now you can see, because Windows 7 is my client and Server 100 is my domain controller, the general start and end times that are occurring, okay? Now, you'll see that most of the activity on my DC is 24 hours, and that makes sense. But general time for this machine, and I apologize that I travel the world, so this is a bit skew, but it tells me start time is 4 p.m. and end time is 2 p.m. So it's telling me that I have a window of time that I'm not using. I guarantee you, if I were to go to that machine and someone log on in the off time, it is going to trigger an unusual log-on activity, giving me insight into something that may be happening. You'll see here, this is unusual activity. So this is saying that this user had unusual activity between 3 and 4, which is the time I just told you. And for this user, the general start time is 9 p.m. to 1. So it's indicating over time, this is the normal behavior. And AI does that for all entities, right? All users and all computers. Then, once the baseline is established, which can take a little while, if the system, it's nothing more than sitting on top of a SIM, if the SIM sees an event that falls outside of that normal behavior, it triggers an alert. This is the new way of detecting anomalies of attacks. Because if a normal user is logging on between these times, it's normal. When they're not logging on in those times and they haven't done it for months, and then someone does, something's up. Something strange is going on. So this gives us the details of why this has been triggered. So the whole idea of user behavior analytics gives us insights into what is happening on these endpoints. It also gives us insights into what's happening for users. Now, soon you're going to see released out of the 80 Solutions a brand new white paper on user behavior analytics, and we have some amazing use cases in there that I want you to read. So keep an eye out for that white paper. It should be coming out in the next week or two, totally dedicated to user behavior analytics. Now here, because we're focusing on endpoints, I only focused on the first time logon. Okay, what does that mean? Well, that means that I have a user that's logging on for the first time to an endpoint. So if I come in here and I look at first time remote access on a host, and let's see, first time remote access on a host, let's go back 6 months, and here you'll see this. So what I did is I, of course, created this, but I tried to get into a host, and it had never used remote access before. That is a first-time use of remote access. Now imagine that. You have, let's say, 10,000 endpoints. No one is remotely accessing them, and then all of a sudden someone does. I think you're under attack, because that is a very abnormal thing to occur in months of behavior that all of a sudden it occurs. So this is the way that this gives you that information. Now, inside of AD Audit Plus, with all of these analytics, this user behavior analytics, we have this little light bulb to tell you what the details are. So we give you the information about how that particular aspect is working in the environment. So we have the first time access, we have logon times for host. Again, this is important not only for users on a host, but also for a host. So if we come in here and we look at unusual logon activity time on a host, we can see, if I have any, and I don't have any on this particular one, we would be able to see if someone is logging on at a time that no one ever logs on to that host. Set up an alert, and the alert will notify us of that particular activity. And then finally, the one related to host is logon failures. So when we have an exorbitant number of logon failures, we want to be able to see that. What would this indicate? Well, similar to the first time access, this would be someone is trying to break into this host and they have so many failed logons, and we want to see the details around that. Okay? Now, of course, you'll see thresholds. There's a lot of details behind user behavior analytics, and that's, again, where this information becomes important for you to know exactly what's going on in the background so that you can see that. User behavior analytics is becoming extremely important for any SIM solution to give us insights into when things are changing. But the whole point of user behavior analytics is that we create a baseline of activity. Because we have a baseline activity that is based on a time frame. So again, when you introduce AD Audit Plus into your environment to use UBA, you're not going to be able to see results in one day, because it has to create a baseline of activity, a normal, so that you don't receive the false positives. The white paper that we've written talks all about this and gives you insight into why it's important for UBA, and then it gives you the case studies or the use cases that clearly indicate that a SIM solution cannot do what user behavior analytics does. One of the things that we're doing beyond AD Audit Plus is our big solution for IT security is called Log360, and Log360 has user and entity behavior analytics, and it has a risk score, and it is absolutely phenomenal. So that is going to be coming out soon, and soon AD Audit Plus is going to have risk score as well. And the risk score just gives you an indication based on a multitude of analytics if something is more happening. So if I have a first-time use with remote access, then I have logon failures, then I have a certain process occurring, that's going to increase that score. I can guarantee you this type of technology is going to change the way that we secure our environments, and it's so awesome to see that AD Audit Plus already has it incorporated. So that's the way that we can actually detect attacks that are occurring on our endpoint or stemming from our endpoints and what's happening. So that gives you an idea of how we can secure our endpoints. We must first make sure that the endpoints are provisioned securely. Once we know that, all we do is detect changes. We detect changes to groups, users that are created. They should not happen very often. We look at key changes, scheduled tasks, services that are installed, anything like that. Again, this should be rare. But we will also want to look at the normal behavior that occurs, and if anything happens outside of that. And again, if you have 10,000 endpoints, you can't see this in the logs. You don't have to. User behavior analytics does it for you. It goes through every entry and it determines normal, and when something's outside of that, it tells you about it immediately through an alert. This is how we are going to start to protect our endpoints. User behavior analytics is brand new, really started halfway through 2018. So 2019 is the breakout year for user behavior analytics, and I truly feel that it's going to change the landscape of all of our networks and being able to detect what's going on. So I hope this was valuable information to you, giving you some things to think about. Obviously, in a 40-minute webinar, there's no way that we can cover everything, but hopefully it got you thinking about some different things, some follow-up things. You can actually download and install AD Audit Plus for free. It comes with user behavior analytics. It's a 30-day trial, so certainly you will start to see behaviors and anomalies within that time frame. So I encourage you to download and install AD Audit Plus. It's a download to configure, less than 30 minutes. Super simple to do that. If you have any questions about how to use AD Audit Plus or any of the other solutions that we have, please email me. If you have any questions about Active Directory, Azure Active Directory, group policy, security, email me with those questions as well. If I don't know the answer as an MVP, I certainly can track down some of those things for you. Just a reminder, we do have a webinar tomorrow on looking at Active Directory changes. Hopefully you can join us for that. I showed you how to do that. And I'm going to let you get back to work. I know that you have a busy day. I do as well. So this concludes our webinar. I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank my colleagues for answering the questions that came through. And for myself, Derek Melber, and the rest of the AD Solutions team, until tomorrow or the next time I see you, have a great rest of your day, and hopefully see you tomorrow. Thanks a lot.